Today we're going to be talking about something a little different than I had planned. So I had this all ready to go, all ready to film last night, and I was doing what you do in May, and that is that you run from one kid's thing to the next and hope you don't lose your mind in the process. And while I was at one of those activities, a mom came up to me and said, "Oh my goodness, I listen to your podcast like every day. And I just keep listening, hoping that I'm gonna figure out how to help my son. And I love it, but I just don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, what's going on with your son?" And she said, "He's just making some really bad choices. We had to kick him out because he's been vaping and he's been doing these things. And now like he is in a situation where he's just making some terrible choices. And it's like he can't see it. He keeps saying he knows, but he keeps doing it." And as I talked to that mom, what really stood out to me more than anything is how much it hurts when our kids make choices that we know aren't good for them, because we give everything to help our kids, and we love them more than life itself. And then when they make these choices, it's like it takes a part of us. And the struggle between I have to let those consequences fall, and I really love my kid and I want so much to help them. That struggle is so difficult. And I had to run because we had to run to the next activity. And so I couldn't finish that conversation. But as I drove home, I just kept thinking about it. And that night I kept thinking about it. And the spirit just said, "You need to answer her question." And so we're kind of hashing everything that we were planning on talking about. And today, I am just going to answer a little piece of that question. Now, there are so many elements to it. And someday, hopefully, we can have a long discussion and answer some more of those questions. But today, what I want to answer for you is three things. And number one is, why do kids do that? Why do they make decisions that should be obvious are not good ones? And number two, how can we help them? And number three, what does heaven want you to know? So we're going to jump into that. We're going to use some of the scriptures from Mosiah. We're going to be talking about that. So if you're studying this with your Come Follow Me study, that will be super helpful. If you are just struggling with a child right now and wondering how you can help them, I hope you find some really powerful answers today as we discuss these insights during the Inner Strength Parenting podcast. So let's talk about thing number one. Why do kids make poor decisions? Now, sometimes those kids are little, but oftentimes those kids are teenagers or grown kids. And sometimes they just do really stupid things, right? And we look at them and we think, how could you not see that this is a bad decision? And we love them so much and we want them to understand. But no matter how much we try to explain to them that they're making a bad decision, they still keep making it. So why do they do that? To explain why, we are going to jump to the story of Zeniff. Now, Zeniff was raised in the time of King Benjamin. He lived there, and he was taught in the ways of righteousness, and he was a good guy. He was raised in the right way. But he was sent with a group of people to go out into the wilderness and find the Lamanites and kind of spy on them to see if they could overtake them. And while he did that, something happened that was kind of strange. As he went with a few people, he took just a small group of people, and he went into the Lamanites to see what was going on. And if you look in Mosiah chapter 9, verse 1, you see that he sees what is good. It says that he saw what was good about the Lamanites, and he was desirous that they should not be destroyed. Now, this is good. Zeniff is a good person. He's seeing the Lamanites. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to just destroy them." So this is arguably a good thing, right? So he goes back out into the wilderness to his brother and her, kind of hiding out, waiting to see what happens. And he goes out and he says, "Hey, I don't think we should destroy these people. They're good." Now, the people out in the wilderness didn't agree with him. And so what happened is you've got some people that think they should still do what they were sent there to do. And then you've got Zeniff who thinks, no, we shouldn't. And then pretty soon you have this all out battle war amongst themselves in the wilderness over what they should do. And it ends up happening that people are killed and it's a mess. So they go back to Zarahemla and they have to explain to everyone what happened. And even after this huge fight, Zenoff is still convinced. He's still convinced that he needs to go make a treaty with the Lamanites. He needs to join forces with them instead of try to destroy them. And in Mosiah chapter 9, verse 3, we see the principle that we're going to apply to our kids here. It says, and yet I being overzealous. So this is Zenoff. I being overzealous to inherit the land of our fathers, collected as many as were desirous to go up to possess the land, and started again on our journey into the wilderness to go up to the land. So even after this fight, he cannot get his mind off of it. He is hyper fixated on, I'm going to go make an alliance. We're going to be able to live again in the land of our fathers without war, and it's going to be amazing. And no matter how many people try to tell him that's not going to work and that it's a bad idea, he is absolutely convinced it will. He's overzealous. Now, I think this is what happens to our kids sometimes, and quite frankly, to us. Sometimes we get an idea in our head and we fixate on it. We become so focused, so intent on it that it's all we can see. And even when there's contention, even when there's fighting, even when bad things are happening, it's like it doesn't dissuade us because we are so focused on what we are convinced we need to do that we don't see anything else around us. And this is sometimes what happens with our kids, especially teens and adults, is they become so focused on one thing that no matter what we try to tell them and no matter what is happening around them, they just don't see it. And even though to us it makes perfect sense, and maybe to the rest of the world it makes perfect sense what we are trying to tell them, to them it doesn't. Because all they see is what they have decided has to be. And they're so focused on that. They're so focused on that they just, logic does not sink in. It doesn't make sense. And it can happen to good people, as was the case with Zenoff. Zenoff was a good person and he was trying to do a good thing, but because he was so focused on it, he didn't see all of the other things around him. So let's talk about then, if that's happening to our kids, what can we do? What can we do to try to help them? So in order to understand that, let's talk about first what we tend to do naturally as parents. And what we tend to do naturally is two things. And number one is that we worry a lot. We worry about what they're doing and we stress about what they're doing, and we become fixated on that. Just like our kids are fixated on what they want to do, we become fixated on the worry and what is going to happen to them if they continue down this path. We're really good at that as parents. We see one little behavior and maybe it even turns into a bigger behavior, but regardless of the size of it, we make it 100 times worse because we see if they continue on this path forever, this is what they're going to end up as. And that causes so much anxiety and fear in us as parents. And then we just start to kind of ruminate on it. We just cycle it in our minds and we think we're doing the right thing because we're trying to figure out how to help our kids. Our intent is good. Our hearts are good, just like Zenoff's, but we come super, super focused on this one problem. And so we put all of our intention into doing the second thing that parents try to do, and that is to fixing it. We want to fix it. So we try to give our kids lots of counsel, lots of advice. We try to maybe figure out which consequences would be adequate. And we spend all of this time and effort into trying to fix the problem. But here is where that goes wrong. And that is that when we are in a state of worry, that is actually a state of fear. Now, fear and faith are opposites. So when we are in worry, what happens is, like we just mentioned, we become a little hyper fixated like Zenoff did on that worry. We're in this place of fear where our conscious, logical, prefrontal cortex brain is not working very well because we're in fear. And so when the Spirit is trying to help us as a parent, and when heaven is trying to send us ideas and inspiration, and here's the next step, we don't hear it. Just like our kids don't hear us, we don't hear the Spirit. And so then what happens is we try to do exactly what Zenith and his people did. And that is that we try to do things in our own strength. We're going to jump to Mosiah chapter 9, verse 17. And what we're going to find here is that we are in a situation where now we are talking about how Zenith's people. Okay, so let me just fill you in what happened here. So Zenith was determined, hey, I'm going to do this. And so he goes to the Lamanite king and he's like, I think I can reason with him. So he goes into the Lamanite king and he says, hey, could we live with you? Like, could we make a treaty and live with you? And the Lamanite king says, sure. I'm actually going to have my people move out of part of the city and I'm going to let your people live there and it will be great. We'll live together. Everyone will be happy. Now, anyone watching that situation would be like, wait, that is way too good to be true. He has to have something up his sleeve. And he absolutely did. We learned that from the very beginning, it was his cunning design to get back at those people, because from the time of Laman and Lemuel and Nephi, there was that contention that started when they left Jerusalem and then in the wilderness and on the ship and all the way through. And then the Nephites and the Lamanites separated. Well, the Lamanites never forgave Nephi and the Nephites for what they supposedly did to them, how they wronged them, because the Lamanites didn't see it as we weren't listening to the Lord and our hearts were hardened. No, that's not how they saw it at all. They saw it as our bossy brother made us do all these things, ruined our lives, ripped us out of our beautiful life in Jerusalem, took us through the wilderness, took us on the ship, ruined, like stole everything from us. That's how they saw it. So they saw it as we have been wronged over and over and over by these people, and it's not fair. Not fair. So when the king of Lamanites saw that Zenith is here and he's trying to come into the land, he saw it as an opportunity. He saw it as an opportunity. It's about time that we got our fair share. So he let them move in, and his plan all along was, I'm going to let these people work. I'm going to let them fix up the city and grow crops, and then I'm going to tax them. And he did. He taxed them 50% of everything they produced. And if they didn't give 50%, they were killed. Now, that happened to many people. Many people weren't able to give the 50% and they were killed. So the rest of the people just lived in fear and ended up living in bondage to the Lamanites. So when we see this part of the story, they're now stuck. They're in this position that they chose, right? It's a natural consequence for what they did, but yet they haven't been freed. They haven't been freed. And the people kind of forget God a little bit, and they kind of are just trying to be strong on their own and trying to do things on their own. So what actually happens is the people of Zarahemla by this time have realized that these people that went with Zenith, we don't know what happened to them. We should go try to find it out. And so Ammon, different Ammon than you know, but not the Ammon who like cut off arms and all that stuff. Different Ammon, popular name. He is sent from Zarahemla with a group of people, and they are sent to go try to find these people. Well, it's really hard. They are kind of wandering in the wilderness. They don't know where to go, but eventually they do find the land of Lehi Nephi. Confusing again because it's the Lamanites living there, but he finds this land of Nephi, and the guards actually overtake them. They're brought in and they're brought to the king, and they explain, oh wait, we are actually from Zarahemla, and they're like, oh wait, we are too. Awesome, long lost. Yay, you're here to save us. Okay. So in this time, we're going to go into Mosiah chapter 9, verse 17. And they're having this discussion about all the things they've gone through, and they decide, hey, this is going to be the day where things get better and we're able to get out of this situation where we have been in. And so there's a switch. Actually, what happens is Ammon is able to teach the people about King Benjamin and what he has taught and God and him saving. And then King Zeniff says to his people, he says, we're going to be freed. We're going to be freed. So have faith, trust the Lord, and everything's going to be okay. There's going to still be a struggle, but he's going to deliver us. And so in Mosiah 9:17, it says, yea, in the strength of the Lord, we did go forth to battle against the Lamanites. For I and my people did cry mightily to the Lord that he would deliver us out of the hands of our enemies. For we were awakened to a remembrance of the deliverance of our fathers. I love this part because you have a people who got themselves into a situation, kind of their own fault, but they were in this situation that wasn't good. And what happened is the Lord actually let them sit there for a while. He didn't rescue them right away. Now, sometimes when that happens to our kids, we look at what's going, we're like, oh, they're making such terrible situations. We've got to change this. We've got to save them. And so we try in our own strength to save them. And that's kind of where the people were. They were trying to do the best they could, but nothing they did was working. And they couldn't free themselves and they couldn't do anything. And so the Lord just waited. He waited. He left them there in bondage for a while, and it was awful and it was horrible. But what that did is it humbled the people. And then when it was time, when the Lord knew that they had been humbled sufficiently, he sent Ammon. And he sent this group of people to save them. And at the right moment, Ammon was able to teach them about faith and to teach them the words of King Benjamin. And at the right moment, they were ready once again to recognize, oh my goodness, we actually need the Lord and we're going to seek him and we're going to try to ask him to help us. And in verse 18, it says, God did hear our cries and did answer our prayers, and we did go forth in his might. Yea, we did go forth against the Lamanites, and in one day and a night we did slay 3,043. We did slay them even until we had driven them out of the land. So what I want to share about this that really stood out to me is that the people were not strong enough to free themselves. They knew that. They tried that over and over again. So the Lord let them wait. And then when they were ready to come to him and ask for his help, they once again went to battle, but this time it was different. This time they had the strength of the Lord. And instead of going forth in their might, they went forward in God's might. And then the miracle happened. It said that they slayed 3,043 in one day and a night. This was an absolute miracle. And so the thing I love about this is I think that this is how it happens with our kids too, is sometimes they make choices and sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes the Lord lets them stay there for a little bit. And it's so hard to watch that. And how the Lord works is he waits. He waits until the time is just right. And then he sends help. And that help might look like you. It might look like a prompting and something you say, and it might look like a total stranger. It might look like someone else they know that isn't even you. But we can know that the Lord does send help, and he sends it at the perfect time. But here's the important part, is that if we are in fear this whole time, if we are living in fear, then those promptings, if he tries to prompt us at the right time to help, we won't hear them and we won't be ready. But if in the moment we can say, hey, I really hate what's going on, and I trust God even when. I still trust that he knows what he's doing. I still trust that he's going to help my child. Then we can stay in a place of faith and we can stay in a place of trust. And we can still ask heaven, hey, what's the next best step? What should I be doing now? And when we do that, we go forth in the strength of the Lord. He sends help at the perfect time. He sends insight at the perfect time. He sends peace at the perfect time so that we know when to wait and we know when to act and we know when to love. And that is when the miracles come, the mightiest, most incredible miracles that help save our kids. Now, one last part I just want to share with you is what the Lord does in the meantime. So you're thinking, okay, but what if my child never gets to this point and they've made bad decisions for a really long time? So what if they don't get to this point? Well, I want to share with you what the Lord is doing in the meantime, because he's not just waiting. Like I said, he waited, and yes, he does wait, but he's actually so active. He's so active. So if we look at Mosiah chapter 7, verse 29, this is when the people are in bondage, there are sore afflictions, lots of things are happening. And we have some insight into what the Lord is doing in that time. It says, "For behold, the Lord hath said, I will not succor my people in the day of their transgressions." In other words, I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to come to their aid when they're making poor choices. He continues on, "But I will hedge up their ways that they prosper not, and their doing shall be as a stumbling block before them." Now, so many times I've read that and thought, wait, that doesn't sound like the Lord. Why would he actually make our path more difficult? And this is the reason. If our path is leading to somewhere he doesn't want us to go, he's not going to help us get there. In fact, he's going to send obstacle after obstacle after obstacle to make our path difficult so that we will stop walking it. He's going to send obstacles, he's going to send afflictions to slow us down, to stop us, and most importantly, to help us realize we need him so that we will seek him and so that he can direct us on a better path. So, my friend, if your child is taking a path right now that you know is a bad one, trust that heaven knows too. And heaven is sending all sorts of obstacles their way. And it may look like bad things happening in your child's life, and that may feel so painful. But know that actually those things are probably from heaven. And those things have a purpose. And those things are God's handiwork. So know that even though you're looking at this situation and you have no idea if or how it will ever turn out, that heaven has a plan. And that all of those obstacles showing up in your child's life right now are part of that plan. And your job as mom or dad or grandma or grandpa is to trust the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to trust the God that brought the children of Israel through the Red Sea, to trust the God that created miracle after miracle after miracle, to trust that that same God can create a miracle just as big in your child's life. And that right now, all of those obstacles you see and all of those things happening in your child's life are actually the Lord's work, are actually him getting your child to the perfect place that he can send help, that he can send you, that he can send other people, and he can lead your child back to where he or she needs to be. And so in those moments, the best thing you can do is when you catch yourself in that worry, and we all do it. When you catch yourself in that worry, just remember and remind yourself, God is doing a great work. He's got this. God is doing a great work. He's got this. And let your heart be at peace, because when your heart is at peace, you're in a position to hear the inspiration and the instruction from heaven. And it will come. And it will come one step at a time, always at the perfect time. I'm Jamie Knapp. I hope you loved this. If you did, be sure to share it with someone you loved. And if you have a parenting question, let me know, comment below, or go to innerstrengthparenting.com. Send me an email, let me know what it is. And if I can, I'll try to include it as we find insights from the scriptures to help you love your life, live your mission, and raise kids who do the same. I'll see you next time.